Calaroga Shark Media. Hello and welcome to Ghost, Scary Stories. This episode is titled Spirits of the Speakeasy, a New York Ghost Story. Part 4, Requiem for the Forgotten.
The early morning light filtered through the windows of the broken bottle, casting long shadows across the empty bar. Eddie Hernandez sat at a corner table, surrounded by stacks of papers, old photographs, and hastily scribbled notes. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed sleepless nights spent unraveling the decades-old mystery that had consumed his life. As Eddie pored over the evidence one last time, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Thomas Blackwood's criminal empire, Sophia and Daniel's plan to expose it, his own grandfather's involvement, it all led to one inescapable conclusion. But the final piece was still missing, and Eddie knew he had to act fast. A soft whisper brushed against his ear. "Eddie, hurry!" He looked up to see Sophia's ghostly form hovering nearby, her eyes filled with urgency. Eddie nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Time was running out. With renewed determination, Eddie reached for his phone and dialed a number he'd discovered in his grandfather's old address book. As it rang, he silently prayed that the person on the other end was still alive and willing to talk. "Hello?" a gravelly voice answered. Eddie took a deep breath. "Mr. Rossi, my name is Eddie Hernandez. I'm calling about something that happened at the Broken Bottle in 1925. There was a long pause, then a heavy sigh. I wondered if someone would ever call about that. It's about time. An hour later, Eddie sat across from Frank Rossi, a man in his late 90s who had once been a low-level enforcer for Thomas Blackwood. As Rossi spoke, his voice trembling with the weight of long-held secrets, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Blackwood was losing control, Rossi explained. Sophia and that journalist, they had evidence that would have brought down his whole operation, but it wasn't Blackwood who silenced them. Eddie leaned forward, his heart pounding. Then who? Rossi's rheumy eyes met Eddie's. It was Judge Harrison. He had the most to lose if the truth came out. He ordered the hit, and I'm ashamed to say I carried it out. As Rossi continued his confession, detailing the events of that fateful night, the air in the bar grew cold. Glasses began to rattle on shelves, and the old jukebox in the corner crackled to life, playing a mournful jazz tune. Suddenly, the room was filled with ghostly figures. Flappers, gangsters, musicians, all going about their business as if it was still 1925. And there, at the center of it all, stood Sophia and Daniel, their forms more solid than the others. Eddie watched, transfixed, as the scene of their final moments played out before him. He saw Daniel confronting Judge Harrison, brandishing a folder full of evidence. He saw Sophia rushing in to warn Daniel, not realizing she was walking into a trap. And he saw his own grandfather, young and terrified, trying desperately to intervene, but arriving too late. As the ghostly tableau reached its tragic climax, Eddie felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see his grandfather, not as the old man he remembered, but as the young bartender he had been in 1925. "I'm sorry, mijo," his grandfather's ghost said, his voice heavy with regret. "I tried to protect them, but I failed. And then I failed you by keeping the truth hidden all these years." Eddie reached out to touch his grandfather's hand, but his fingers passed through the ghostly form. "You did what you thought was right, abuelo, but it's time to set things right." With newfound resolve, Eddie turned back to Rossi. "Mr. Rossi, I need you to come with me to the police. It's time to tell them everything." Rossi nodded, tears in his eyes. "Yes, it's long past time. I'm ready to pay for what I've done." As Eddie and Rossi stood to leave, the ghostly scene faded away. But Sophia remained, her form growing brighter as she approached Eddie. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice clear for the first time. You've given us peace." Eddie smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "No, Sophia, you gave me purpose. Rest now. Your story will finally be told." With a radiant smile, Sophia's form began to dissolve into motes of light. As she faded away, Eddie caught a glimpse of Daniel waiting for her, his hand outstretched. Then, in a flash of warmth and light, they were gone. The aftermath of Eddie's discovery sent shockwaves through New York. Judge Harrison's descendants, who had continued to profit from his ill-gotten gains, were brought to justice. The full extent of the 1920s corruption was exposed, leading to a re-evaluation of numerous historical cases. The broken bottle, once a den of secrets and sorrow, was transformed. Eddie used his inheritance money his grandfather had squirreled away out of guilt to renovate the bar, turning it into a jazz club that honored the memory of Sophia Bellamy and all those who had been silenced. On opening night, as the first notes of jazz filled the air, Eddie felt a familiar chill. But this time, it wasn't accompanied by whispers or fear. Instead, he caught the faint sound of Sophia's laugh, joyous and free, and knew that she and all the restless spirits of the broken bottle had finally found peace. As Eddie looked out over the crowded bar, he raised a glass in a silent toast. To Sophia and Daniel, to his grandfather, to all those who had played a part in this decades-long drama. Their stories would not be forgotten. The secrets of the broken bottle had finally been laid to rest, but its legacy, a legacy of truth, justice, and the power of uncovering long-buried secrets, would live on. And as the music swelled and the crowd cheered, Eddie Hernandez knew that he had found his true calling, giving voice to the voiceless and ensuring that the echoes of the past would always have a place in the present. The ghost story of the broken bottle was over, but its impact would resonate for generations to come.
Ghost is a Calaroga Shark Media production, written and hosted by Alexander Ian McIntyre, produced by Mark Francis, executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. Portions of this podcast may have been created with the assistance of AI.
This show, along with hundreds of others from Calaroga Shark Media, is available commercial-free on any player, hassle-free. Just look for the link in the episode or show notes. Ghost now has merch. Find shirts, mugs, and more with the Ghost logo for sale at our merch store. There's free shipping and 10% off now with the coupon NEWMERCH10. Did we say there's free shipping? Check out all the goods at calaroga.com, that's CALOROGA.com, or just look for the link in the show notes. Thanks for supporting the show, we really appreciate it.
Calaroga Shark Media.